because we got Holly. So Holly Dowling, she's an award-winning global keynote speaker. And just so y'all know, we did test this before we went on and it was working. So we know it worked. Holly is a highly sought after award-winning global keynote speaker and inspirational thought leader. In fact, she is one of the top 10 thought leaders globally alongside Deepak Chopra. That's who we're talking to today, y'all. She has impacted the hearts of people around the world in over 160 countries with her A Celebration of You podcast. You can find it on iHeartRadio. Please go follow her and go listen to the podcast. She also has her own app called Hollyism's Daily Dose of Inspirations. So I want you to go download that app. It is really cool. Holly has delivered in a number of organizations, including Deloitte, Facebook, Wells Fargo, Cisco, her Extraordinary Leader program. And she is an expert in strengths-based leadership and corporate women's empowerment. She does that through her Extraordinary Leader program. Now, today, Holly is continually brought back by her clients as a keynote speaker, corporate facilitator, and consultant. In recognition of her work, she is a proud recipient of 2 Silver Stevie Awards for Women in Business, the American Riviera Women's Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and recognized as one of the 10 most inspiring global thought leaders of 2020. In addition, she is the proud partner of the United Nations Foundation, a member of the African American Consulate, and is personally honored to be a speaking member of the Anti-Internet Child Exploitation Team Council. So what I want you guys to know about Holly, because her story is absolutely incredible. And Holly is someone that I met at Brilliant. So I'm just talking here. Holly is someone I met at Brilliant. And what you're going to hear from her is this ability to connect around who we are and how we show up. And Holly is one of those people who also really understands the divine download and being able to pause and be calm and be clear, give yourself some grace around what you're trying to do and how you're trying to show up. And we connected, we always talk about how people just show up in your lives. I was at this amazing event in LA called the Brilliant Event, and put on by Carrie Murphy and her team at Inspired Living. And Holly was one of the keynote speakers. And one of the first things she talked about was Hollyisms. And I thought, wait a minute. Now my team at my last company, when I moved and got promoted, gave me this whole video and they called it Laurelisms because of all the stuff I used to say. I was like, okay, I think this woman is a kindred spirit, but let me just keep listening. And as Holly talked about her story and talked about how she learned how to show up as Holly, to step into what she knew she was supposed to do as opposed to what everyone else was telling her she was supposed to do. That all just resonated because we find these places where we do what everyone else says. We do what absolutely everyone else says and not what we are supposed to be doing. And that's why sometimes we end up not being connected, not being happy, not being able to do the things we need to do. So with that let's talk about kind of your story, especially you guys hearing how she started, which is really cool.
Darling, how we started.
Yes.
Question. I just love that question.
Yes.
So this is going to date me, and I'm going to go quick here, but for everybody out there listening, I would love to know if you can relate to this. And that is, I was the little girl in 3rd grade living in Reading, Pennsylvania. The only TV in our home was in our basement. And at the time, there was only those 3 stations. But I was the shy, overweight little girl. And on Friday night, all I cared about was looking forward to watching Love Boat and Fantasy Island.
Yes.
And it began a dream that manifested, fast forward in my life, that I used to dream about being to Love Boat. Yeah. And it happened with the grace of God, but also it gave me my mantra. Fast forward to college, thinking I'm going to be an attorney, and I'm like, I hate free law. Yes. I don't want to do this, right? The world thinks that this is what I should do, but I'm not doing it. And I wanted to see the world and travel. So I found at that time the only way that you could finally finish a college degree before restaurant and hotel management, physical education, dance, and leisure studies. Went to the back of magazines, Laurel,
yes,
in the library, and wrote down cruise ships and sent emails, or not emails, called them, and then sent resume and cover letter to 19 cruise ship in hot pink letters, hot pink paper, and ended up getting 2 offers.
Yep.
And everybody I met with that I said, "Could you give me 10 minutes of your time to help me figure out how to do this?" Everybody said, "Get your head out of the clouds. It'll never work."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, am I sounding okay on your end, everybody?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. We're good. We're good. Yeah. When Holly told us at Brilliant that she started out as a cruise director, I thought, I don't think I've ever really met a cruise director. The only cruise director I know was Julie on Love Boat. Mm-hmm. And telling that story about how, you know, I did pre-law because that's what I was supposed to do, but that's not where my spirit lies. So Holly, go a little bit deeper for people, because and then I want to transition into what we talked about earlier during this COVID period when you and I were talking about the show. But tell people what it was that made you really get to the point where you said, this is just not what I want to do. I don't see anything that says go be a cruise director and get a degree in cruise directing, but I know this is something what I want to do. What is it that made you just move into action?
Well, I love it you just asked that, because I think we all have, I'm going to call them the butterflies on the shoulders. Mm-hmm. It's those nudges, those things that have inspired you your whole life, the little dreams we have that when we're young, nobody's involved. Nobody's bad intention, but the world thinks, well, you shouldn't go do that because it's not a safe plan. How many times do we hear you got to play the safe way? So I think that just having that butterfly on my shoulder forever and it manifesting in that dream that I never gave up. When I went to make this happen, Laurel, I realized that, the more people, and I have to say, this has gone with me my whole life.
Yeah.
My mantra, one of my many mantras, that tell me no, watch me go.
Yes.
The more people told me that I couldn't do this, that you got to go make it a real job, you got to go do that, the more I was fueled. And I know that everybody out there listening knows what I'm talking about. There may be many of us that still have those butterflies on the shoulders, but you know what we do with all great intention? We shit on ourselves. And that's SHOULD.
Yes. Should on ourselves.
Yeah, and we should on others. Remember,
yes.
SHOULD. We think that we should put off our dreams until we've taken care of everybody else in our life.
Right.
Make sure everything else is where it needs to be. And we put ourselves last. And you know what I have to say to that?
Yeah.
Because the reality is, when you put yourself last, nobody wins, gang. Nobody gets the best version of you. And at the end of the day, you're depleted and worn out. So, we could go on and on about this, but I do believe that we as human beings, I don't care what race you are, what gender you are, what age you are, we were put on this planet with gifts.
Yes.
Like something much greater than us. And when we can tap into that and not look to validation from around and outside of us, but find it within our own and stop listening to the world and listen to your soul.
Yes.
You will find what that calling is. And that's what gives me the fearless faith I have. Not to say I haven't been through my downtime, darling, and you know that, Laurel. So
yes.
Soapbox, you got me going.
Well, but I think what's important about that, and I talked about this after I came back from my birthday trip, which was, it sometimes takes a long time for us to step into that ownership of our gifts, right? Because we get trained to do stuff. We get trained to do the thing that everybody else says, right? From very young. What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? Or, hey, you should be. Like I was talking to somebody who happens to be, or I listened to a book of somebody who happens to be of Nigerian background. And she said, for us, it's like you're either a lawyer or you're a doctor. That is success. You have to be a lawyer or you're a doctor. And she said, and not everybody wants to be a lawyer or a doctor. But we get these ideas that are sometimes in our heart, but then they get shooted on by everybody else about how you should show up, what work you should do, what job you should have, as opposed to what are your gifts and how can you deliver all of that to the world? Because that's how you make the biggest impact. That's how you make the biggest impact. So when we were talking about being on the show, and this is what I really want people to dig into with you. We talked about how this COVID thing has been just a challenge for everybody, right? It has been difficult. It has been hard. It has been earth-shattering for many. It has been mostly debilitating because we have also had to spend a lot of time with ourselves, which requires you to dig into a lot of stuff that's kind of been hidden. But you said something masterful to me when we were talking. And you said, as hard as this COVID thing has been, I found Holly during COVID. Talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that.
And you're one of the few people that I have actually really started to talk about with this. I think when we chatted the other day, I said, I just recently shared it with a client at an event, but I've not really talked about it because it really hit me in the last 3 to 4 months. And I think there's 3 things that I think are really important that are coming to me really strongly right now. You know how we get the divine nudge that I don't want to miss,
Yes.
Laurel, and that is, first of all, when I said I found Holly in COVID, I truly believe that in the midst of all of this mess, the chaos, the uncertainty, I think that globally as well as domestically as human beings, we have found an opportunity to recalibrate.
Yes.
To recalibrate, whether you wanted to or not, whether you intentionally embraced it or it's now happening as a byproduct, you have been in a position to figure out what really matters.
Right.
And you know, what happened to my business, and as your beautiful introduction, thank you so much for that. I so love you for that. I sit there and I go, wow, I sound really good on it.
Because you are amazing.
I just love you for that because I'm like, oh. But back to reality, you know, it doesn't matter how good we sound on paper and what we do in the world. It's how are you waking up every day? And this entire last year and a half, you know, doing what I do for a living, I was on the road all the time. But all that got put to a halt.
Yes.
And if you think about it, a lot of my live stuff, it was a matter of turning it into virtual.
Yes.
Which I have to say was scary. But you know what? I loved every minute of it. And what I realized, Laurel, to your point, I have never, it's easy to preach it to the world.
Yes.
And I, Holly Dowling, for the first time in my life, took accountability and ownership, and it's going to get me a little emotional because I leaned into my spiritual self more than I ever had. And I found that taking care of Holly emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually was never going to be a side thing. It's going to be the number one thing.
Yes.
Because I never put my health first. And you know what, everybody? I put my health first, and I feel better than I've ever felt. 3-4 months ago, I was like, wow, I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing, and I have to share this because I, like many people out there, have been through, I know what it's like to be in really bad relationships.
Right.
I know what it's like to hit rock bottom. I just shared one of my dark paths a couple of years ago for the first time, as you know.
Yes.
I know what it's like to be divorced and remarried. I also know that I found Holly without losing my husband.
Ah.
And that was pretty powerful.
Talk about that. Talk about that, because this whole relationship thing, right? And whether you're married, whether you're in a committed relationship, whether it's just family, that whole being able to find you without losing your connected person, that's huge, Holly.
It is. And I say that with goosies all over my arms as I'm sitting here, because what you don't know about Holly, everybody, is that most of my life, it's really been fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
I can fight and tell me no, watch me go. But I also get to a point where I will, when it gets so bad, I'll run.
Yes.
And the reason that's important to just come out and say that is that you can find yourself without losing someone that you really care about. If you're willing to realize that part of that person being in your world is part of helping you get healthy.
Yes.
And the other piece to this is my closest, and I know that some of them may even be listening right now.
Yeah.
The people that are my tribe are my siblings and their spouses and significant others.
Yes.
And our tribe got broken during COVID because we lost family.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't be together to celebrate my mom's passing.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't be together at times that were really critical that we would normally be together to hold each other and love each other. So part of this whole part has been finding Holly and realizing we can be on the other side of the world. But you know, the people that you really love, should be unconditional love, and know that they're there for you no matter what.
Yes.
So this has been a huge, I'm going to say, a come to Jesus for me
Mm-hmm.
In many ways. And so thank you for asking that. And,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go to another whole paradigm on this,
Yes.
Laurel, because I don't want to forget. And I do a lot with leaders, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you graciously shared it. So
Mm-hmm.
I always say you don't need a title to lead, right?
Right.
You could have your own business. You could not do anything at all right now and be eating potato chips and sitting on your couch going horizontal with a remote. And you're still have an opportunity to lead by how you influence the people around you.
Do I not say all the time, leadership is about behavior, not about position? Come on, people. You're hearing it from Holly.
True. And I love every moment that you say that, Laurel, because you've been out there. You know what it's like to lead in the corporate environment. And so everybody drop the titles.
Yes.
Every time you walk into a grocery store or you're anywhere, you are leading by influencing others. So, but it starts with self.
Yes.
That old saying, you can't give away if you're an overdrawn bank account. So how you're influencing and feeding your soul and your mind and your emotional state is critical.
Right.
But as a leader, one of the things that I have found in COVID, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to repeat it, I want to pause and I want it to be a profound moment for everybody listening.
Yes.
Chaos and uncertainty do not create character. They reveal character.
Say that again.
Chaos and uncertainty do not create character. It reveals character.
I love that. I love that.
So it was part of my waking up and looking in the mirror and saying, who am I choosing to be if I'm not worrying about pleasing the world?
Mm-hmm.
And your character goes with you everywhere, gang.
Yes.
Forget your reputation. Your character creates your reputation.
Yes, it
I
does.
look at you smiling. You're like, hey,
Yes,
man,
it does. Yes.
So I just wanted to share that because I think as leaders, no matter what, again, we don't need a title to lead, but
Right.
how is your character showing up right now? And
Right.
we have a choice every day we wake up. Look what's behind me on my wall.
Right.
Choose joy. You have
Yes.
a choice every day, gang. I don't care what's going on. We can blame it on the world, but when you blame it on the world, do you see my hand? We point fingers, but we got three coming back at us.
Exactly. I read that the other day. I said, when you point to somebody else, notice you got three fingers pointing back at you. And I was like, okay, I'd never thought about that way. And it's all about, when you talk about that character, that so resonates with me, because I remember my dad telling us from the time we were really little, he would say, even when you have nothing, if you have a good name, you have absolutely everything, right? Because it's not about the stuff, but it is about how you showed up and what actions you took and how you treated people, right? And so that whole idea of character and who you are, it's who you are when you're by yourself. It's who you are when you're with other people. That who you are, you can run from a lot of stuff, but you can't run from who you are.
Oh, yes, it's true. It's your shadow. It's with you.
It's your shadow.
Wash it off.
Right?
All
Exactly.
the showers in the world aren't going to do it.
They are not. They are not. Well, and when you think about, Holly, how you have had to really help leaders kind of step into that and step away from the ego that's related to title and money and which company I work with and all this. And you've worked with some really big ones that have some really great and some currently challenging reputations. What are the key things that you're telling leaders in order for them to truly lead from a place of authentic self, right, and power, but not from ego?
Oh, that's we could spend a whole nother show on this one, Laurel, which
Right.
I would love to.
Right.
And I would say that what you just said really leads into, and up until these last couple of years, everybody's had the buzz of diversity and inclusion, right?
Yep.
D&I. But what's really escalated is that we're really focusing on inclusion without
Yes.
the I.
Right.
And really, when I say that pulls me to what you just asked, which is, I think the most important thing, I'm going to say three words. You hit on one of them.
Yep.
Authentic, vulnerable, and transparency.
Yes.
When people ask, how do you really create, an inclusive environment?
Mm-hmm.
And what do we do with all these unconscious biases? Because I'm doing a lot around that space, and I will say, it's not rocket science.
No.
this is really common sense. It's just not common practice.
Right.
It's about compassion, vulnerability, and transparency. And when you get those right, as a leader, no matter where you are, you will create a space that helps others feel alive,
right,
included, respected. And you know what I'm going to say to everybody? Stop shining the light on what's wrong with everybody and what's wrong with the world, and start shining a spotlight on what makes people right.
Yes.
You know what? So much of our lens is focusing on the one little thing that's wrong. And hey, it starts with self. What do we do when we wake up? We look at ourselves and we go, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. Or we're always about fixing.
Yes.
For goodness sake, what if you were just to embrace what makes you amazing and brilliant? And oh, by the way, how about take today and after the show, if every moment and every person we interact with, we focus on something great about them.
Yes.
And let them know, even if it's the checker at the grocery store, right? I mean, I think this is so important because that's all people want. We're human beings, and we are in a global malnourished epidemic.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Yes. Global malnourished epidemic. I don't even know what to say about that. I'm like, and scene. Right. Done. Well, but I think what you said, there's a couple of things that you said that are really key, is that, you know, we had this whole focus on DEI, and I won't even get into the fact that we're hiring a whole bunch of people to do DE&I who have no idea what DE&I is. That's a whole different conversation. But the hard part of DE&I is the I, because that gets at exactly what you said. What's getting people? What are the connections we have with people? How are we more alike than dissimilar, right? How can we value and love, dare I say, everybody that we're working with, that we're colleagues with, that we are connected to get to certain outcomes, right? Since we spend so much of our time at work, how do we include people? Because the D is easy. I can go hire a bunch of people who don't look like me, don't talk like me, don't act like me. That's easy. That's just money, right? That's just a process. The I is personal. The I is personal. And so when you talk to these leaders about really thinking through their own bias and their own ability to show up transparently, right, and authentically, talk a little bit more about that, because people sometimes confuse transparency with letting people know absolutely everything about, right, how the sausage is made. They don't need to know the sausage is made. Talk a little bit about how you get leaders to understand what is transparent and what's not.
And I just love the metaphor. And Laurel, this is why every time we even get to catch up, we talk. So right now, it's just how it works, right?
Yes.
It's all out of you. And I'm like, the Laurelism. You know,
right.
I mean, it is. It's the Hollyism and the Laurelism.
Right. Right.
And I just love that. So I'm going to use a couple metaphors that really bring it to the easiest way for everybody. And I share this a lot, but when we think about D&I, you know, and to what you just asked,
yes,
everybody just pause for a second and look at it simply as that. Diversity is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance on the dance floor. And equity is the DJ playing the music that you love to dance to.
That's good, Holly.
You're going to use it. I don't know. You're going to go,
That's good. That's really good. Because, you know, I love to dance. That's good.
Think about that, like really keeping it that simple.
Yeah.
And so to your point, you know, yes, you don't have to reveal all the layers and everything, but what people need more now than ever is authentic. And transparency is about a tap of vulnerability. Just stop acting like your life has been a silver platter. Because let me tell you, I put high-level leaders on my show, and I put them in fireside chats on stages.
Yes.
And when they share, I just did one the other day virtually, and this late leader, and I bring men into women events too.
Yes.
Usually, and I'm all over the place, right? Usually corporate events. But I will tell you that when you ask somebody to share their real story, and they're willing to just peel back a little of the onion and reveal that little bit of transparency, everybody, just know that you connect. People need to know that the Laurels and Hollies and the producer of this show, I think is amazing already.
Yes.
We didn't have a perfect life,
Right.
We've been through our ups and downs. Boy, if you all knew about my dark times, right?
Right.
But when they see that we can overcome, and I choose not to live in woe is me, I choose wow is me, it's a choice.
Right.
But that's what leaders, they need from you. Stop
Yes.
acting like you're holier than thou, because you're not. And people want to follow people they can respect.
Yes.
And respect doesn't mean I'm always going to like you.
Right.
Everybody's not always going to like us. But do they respect us?
Yes.
Because we stand for what we stand for.
Yes. Yes.
And that gives others permission to do it. So I mean, we could talk about, again, we could do this all day long because I'm passionate about it. But thank you for opening that up. That's really important to my heart.
It is important because I think to what you said, you know, it's really critical that people understand you've got to stand on your word, because people will listen to what you say, but they will believe what you do. And so if you stand on your word and you act the way you say, then even if they don't like you, even if they don't believe you, even if they're not aligned with what you say, they know what to expect. And that builds trust. That builds trust.
Pause there. It builds trust. And you just said something that I think I don't want that to get missed. This doesn't mean you have to always agree with everybody. Agreement doesn't mean that you're saying, I agree with you, but are you willing to listen? And are you willing to change a label? Because when you change a label, you change a life.
Yes.
And if you're willing to take the high road, when you change a label, you change a life and you build trust.
Right.
What you just said.
Right.
And I have to say that transparency piece, vulnerability, and authenticity. Everybody has a story.
Right.
And, I shared this, I think, when we met at that event, but you're just like the person driving down the road that cuts you off. This happens all the time. We immediately don't like that person, and who knows what we're saying to them behind our glass door
Yes.
and our windows. But the reality is we know nothing about them. But
right.
if you knew that person was an individual running every red light and cutting you off because they just found out their child is in an ambulance on the way to the
yes.
hospital, would you maybe pause and not throw out all these vulgarities and just realize, wow, I may not know what they're going through, but boy, I could have a moment of empathy.
Yes.
And I was that woman.
Yes.
Running people off and running through red lights way back years ago when my oldest son was diagnosed with cancer. So it's another whole story, but I think it's important to know. My favorite quote by Mr. Rogers, he used to carry it in his pocket, Laurel, and that was, there isn't a person you couldn't love if you knew their story.
See? Do y'all see why I'm talking to Holly? You see that now, right? That for me is huge, because I think, and especially when you talk about driving, and what we say and how we feel and how we react to people, because, we got all this road rage and everything, but I have to manage myself too sometimes, because you do get in those times when you're running late or you're going somewhere and then people are driving slow, and now everybody's on their phones and they're moving over all kinds of lanes, and it's a nightmare. And I finally had to get to the point, and it probably happened, I don't know, maybe last year, probably during the pandemic, some point. I remember having left late and I was trying to get somewhere. And all of a sudden I realized it is nobody else's fault on this road that I left late. So I can't be mad at them for taking their time or going where they're going to go, because that doesn't have anything to do with me. And they're not responsible for me. And so it's that whole reset around ego and responsibility and who we are and how we act and how it impacts other people. How it impacts other people.
It's just beautifully put. I love that you just said that. And you just reminded me of something the other day I was sharing, and Laurel, remember this one, and I think this goes to any human being out there, but stop making the responsibility and power of other people to make you happy. In other words, stop giving away the power to anybody else or making someone else feel responsible for making you happy.
Yeah.
It's no one else's responsibility. So let go. Stop doing that. And you just said that. You just gave us that metaphor when you had that moment. And it's like, And then we blame the world. In fact, to blaming, but it's nobody's responsibility. So stop blaming them and start stepping into your own space and figure it out and stop worrying about. You know what I finally realized several years ago? And I literally can shake my head if you can see me right now like this, right? Because I get passionate, but I'm like, it's time to stop making my life about fitting into the world and start creating a life that fits me.
Yes. Yes. Stop trying to fit in and create what fits you.
Yes.
Did you hear that? I just want to know if you guys heard that. Because what's so powerful about that, Holly, and so here's a revelation that I've had based on what Holly just said, right? Trying to fit into the bubble versus creating something that fits you. That seems to be a little bit of an easier thing if you're talking about entrepreneurship, right? Because you've chosen to leave, you've chosen to do your own thing, you've chosen to at least attempt to create a life that's the life that you want, that looks like what you want, that is the work you want to do. But that doesn't mean you can't do that same thing in a corporate setting. And I think that's where we get people locked in, because it's the job description, it's the politics, it's the savvy, it's the move up or out, it's all the stuff around what it's like to work for someone else. And don't get me wrong, we all got to do what we got to do sometimes, right? We got mortgages to pay and kids to feed, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But that doesn't mean that you have to give up who you are and what you want for that paycheck. You just don't.
No. And you know what? I got to go somewhere right now, because I love that you tied, and you're right. It sounds easy when it's an entrepreneur, but people immediately think in the corporate world, and I can't go leave my job and just go start a business, and we immediately make a volcano out of an anthill.
Yes.
But here's what I want you to know, and I'm very, very blessed to have been all over the world helping, and very, very blessed to have a dear friend, Marcus Buckingham, who been all over sharing the message of strength. And the reason this is important is I want everybody to hear what you just said, Laurel, and to know that your boss, your manager, cannot read your mind.
Right.
The greatest gift you can give to your colleague and to your boss and your manager and to your company, corporate, however large or small, is for you to take a moment and figure out what energizes you.
Yes.
Really finding success. Look back on the last couple of weeks or couple months or a quarter at your job and go, this is where I'm happy. This is what I did. I'm really proud of. And what are you looking forward to next week, next month, next quarter? And by the way, if you don't, nobody can read your mind.
Right.
Keep asking you to do the same things over and over again because you happen to be probably quite proficient at it. That doesn't mean you love it.
Right.
And if you are ready to step into your own, trust me, when everybody wins, you win.
Yes.
You have to articulate on your next one-on-one. Why not have a conversation and just say you listened to the Laurel Rutledge Perspective show and you heard this crazy lady talking about this, but it was an opportunity for you to voice. People always come with problems, but they can show up to a one-on-one and say, here's how I want to begin contributing more.
Yes.
Here's why, because this is where I found success and what I'm loving, and here's how I feel it will help meet our goals and objectives. And oh, by the way, this stuff drains me, but I can keep doing it till we can figure out somebody else that can, or I'll help figure that out. You see, there's strategies.
Yes.
It's called mitigating. It's called owning it. You don't have to leave the corporate world to start doing more of what you love. I had to say all that.
No, you're exactly right. And that's why I'm always very adamant. I was in corporate forever. And I left because I had to. I left because it was time. If I wanted to survive, and I'm not being dramatic, if I wanted to survive, if I didn't want to completely lose my health and my mind, it was time to go. But that's not the same story for everybody else. Only you can decide where you want to be. But you have to own it. You have to own it. The only thing, and people look at me like I'm crazy when I say this, because I used to be in HR. They're like, HR people don't say that. This one does. The only thing a company owes you is a day's pay for a day's work. That's it. They don't owe you anything else. They don't owe you benefits. They don't owe you a great work. They don't owe you any of that. If they want to keep you, and if they value you, and if they understand that the only way to get what they need is through the people that they hire, Then they do those things, but don't get it twisted that they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. That's just a lie. They're doing it because of the bottom line. But you have leaders within the organization that are doing it because they believe it's the right thing to do. And that's who you want to find. You want to find that leader that is doing it because it's the right thing to do. So if you are miserable in your job, if you can't figure it out, have these conversations like Holly just told you. Here's how I want to contribute more, because they're only going to hear it if it impacts what they're trying to do. Love you mean it, but what you love doesn't matter to them.
Exactly.
It's how what you love contributes to what they need, right? Have those conversations that Holly just told you to have. And then if you're still not getting what you need, you at least know, and you can go seek that other project. You can go seek that other manager. You can go seek that other job because you have a choice. But you've got to own it. You've got to own it, and you got to own your own stuff, because you got to be honest about what you're not doing as well.
Amen. And you know what, Laurel? I'm going to just say this because I love what you just told me. Add that to, by the way, if you're not in a leadership position now, why don't you start creating the leader you want to be by starting to have these conversations with your colleagues?
Yes.
And helping them come together and say, how can we begin to collaborate more?
Yes.
Because actually, I do this. You would be amazed how many times I work with teams globally that literally go, we've been working together for over 10 years. I've known this person for this long, and I had no idea that they actually love doing this and they hate doing that. And somebody else is like, I always say, what one person loathes, another person can love. But we make so many assumptions.
Yes.
So stop assuming, stop assessing, start asking, and then start listening.
Yes.
And start creating a collaborative environment. You will soon be the leader down the road, if not here, down somewhere else, that other people want to follow.
Exactly.
And want to be a part of the environment and the world you're creating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that listening is key, right? And listening actively, right? We've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You listen more than you speak. And when you listen to what people say, but listen also to what they don't say. Listen with your eyes, right? Yeah, they're saying something, but what do they really mean? I just had this conversation with a client yesterday, and I'm like, and bless his heart, he's really frustrated, early career. He's going to be CEO one day. I cannot wait to be able to say, I knew him when. He's phenomenal. And just really kind of frustrated about some stuff. And I said, you know what? But here's the thing, because we got to own our own stuff. What I'm hearing you say is you've been having these conversations, and you keep having the conversations. You keep telling people, and you keep telling people. Okay, so they're telling you they're not listening. If you keep having the conversations and you're having the same conversation over and over and over, it only takes one person to change a relationship. So you get a choice to not keep having the same conversation or to have it differently. But here's the thing that I was telling this client of mine. Great, Holly, I think we got you back. I was telling this client of mine is that, you do get a choice in how you change the conversation. We all have choices, and organizations will almost make you think you don't have a choice, but you always do. You have a choice whether or not you show up. You have a choice how you show up. You have a choice what attitude you have when you show up. And you have a choice in the conversations that you have. And so if what you're doing isn't working, you have a choice in doing it differently.
Ooh, I love that. And wait, metaphorically, hey, Laurel, metaphorically right now, can you see me?
Yes.
Can you see me holding my phone?
Yes.
So, to what you just said, if things aren't working, you figure out how to make it work.
Yes.
You have choice.
Yes.
And right now, we have no idea what happened to Holly's
Right.
earlier, but you know what? So what? You know what?
Yes.
Because when you want something bad enough and you are in a place of service and you are finding a way to make impact on others, you figure out how to change it to make it work. So
Yes.
I'm sitting here on my phone listening to you talking about making a choice and making it.
Well, it is this whole interview. Jerry's been holding the phone the whole time. I'm talking, she's like, keep talking. It's just because, so we are going to do this again where it's much simpler, but you are seeing a living, breathing example of figure it out. That's what you're seeing, right? Of wanting it bad enough, knowing how important it is to just work through the crazy and just keep it moving. Because it's about forward progress, not perfection.
Oh, amen. I love that so much. It is all about that, and you don't need to be perfect to be priceless.
I cannot. You don't need to be perfect to be y'all. Look, that really just that like punched me in the gut, man. You don't need to be perfect to be priceless. I hope y'all heard that. Everybody that's listening, because here's the power. I'm like tearing up because here's the power in that. We have put so much pressure on ourselves, not even just about perfection, because we all have, a lot of us have imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. We put so much of our self-worth on what other people believe to be important and what other people believe is priceless. And I am here to tell you that if you are here, you are priceless. The fact that you are here, the fact that you wake up every day and you go out and do something, you are here for a reason. You have a purpose. You are priceless because you are here. And you are not perfect, because none of us is perfect, but that doesn't make you less important or less valuable, because your value is not determined by someone else. So if you don't hear nothing else from this show, you don't have to be perfect to be priceless, because you are priceless because you exist.
And you are enough. You are enough. Right now, in this moment, everybody listening, you are enough just the way you are. And by the way, Laurel, to get to that place for myself where I truly felt that I did not need to be perfect to be priceless, did not happen overnight.
No.
It took me years of always feeling that I have to be the person everybody pictures Holly to be.
Yes.
And just by even letting my hair go curly, I want you to know something. That's a really big deal, because I used to think it had to be polished and all blown out.
Yes.
It's little things, but they're little things that make us let go.
Yes.
Give us permission to say, you know what, I'm just going to be me.
Yes.
My God, when you do and you realize you are absolutely brilliant and beautiful and priceless just the way you are, nobody wants a different version of that.
Right.
They want that. I want that version of Laurel that I have grown to love and adore and cherish. And I believe that that's what Laurel wants with me too.
Yes.
Because anything else is just a facade.
Yes.
It will be gone tomorrow. And then we'll be spending all this energy to try to figure out who we have to be again. And guess what?
Right.
The only one dying is you.
Oh. And honestly, it just takes too dang much energy. It takes too much energy to be what everybody else wants you to be. Y'all, I'm just tired, right? I'm just exhausted. And as Holly started in the beginning about shooting on ourselves, that shooting, what I should do, how I should show up, how I should act, now, don't get me wrong, there's stuff about being appropriate, right? There is appropriateness for situations. But that heavy, here's who you should be, here's how you should show up, that is exhausting. That is exhausting. And you don't have to do, you don't have to do anything except die. Don't even have to pay taxes, right? Now, that may cost you some money, but you don't have to pay taxes. But you are doing yourself and the world a disservice if you're spending so much time turning yourself into a pretzel to be what everybody else thinks you should be. That word should is powerful, and words matter. That word should is powerful. And so I want you to leave here thinking more about the word priceless.
Oh, I love your smile right now as you're saying that. I just love it so much because you're just lighting up. And, we could be on this all day long.
Yes.
And I just want everybody out there to know I'm human, I'm real. Thank you again for that beautiful introduction, Laurel.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, I wake up every morning like we all do. Some days I'm like, you know what? I think today the hair is going on top of the head because that's all I'm feeling like I'm going to do today. And I'm going to care less.
Yeah.
And when you finally get to where you're like, I just like being me. Like I said, and Laurel, you got to, for whoever's listening, you're some of the first people that are really hearing me share this. But I fell in love with Holly. I found Holly. Yeah. And by God, that's a really big deal at my ripe age right now. And I will say that I'm not apologizing for that. Yeah. I'm actually so darn proud to be able to say that, and it gets me emotional saying that.
Yes.
So I only hope and pray that everyone listening and everyone out there can give themselves the gift of baby steps and just fall back in love with who you were created to be, not who the world thinks you should be. You are priceless.
I love that. My friend Suzanne just wrote down. I wrote that one down. It was so good. It just, Holly and I again met several years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago. And even at the event, we were all done up for the event, right? Because it was the brilliant event. So where everybody's got their shiny on. And Holly was actually the very first person who interviewed me for a podcast. And that was before this is even what I knew I wanted to do, right? And there was something in that podcast. There's something about Holly. I'm telling you, if you talk to Holly, there is something about Holly that has you tell stories that you've not told anyone else, ever. And I remember telling her a story about how I felt such a failure because the first university I went to, I was like, it just didn't work. Now, in hindsight, I know I wasn't supposed to be there, but it was failure after failure after failure. I'm not good enough. Professors that said you need to tell these people to show up when they're having issues. I mean, it was horrible. And I remember telling Holly, I think the question was like, what is the one thing that you are the most proud of in terms of having gotten over? And I said, I think it was finally coming to the realization that not having finished there did not make me any less. It just meant that that's not where I was supposed to be. And that revelation, as Holly says, coming into who you are, it has been a lot of work, people. So don't take what Holly is saying or what I'm saying as easy. It's not easy to do this work. It is not easy to give yourself the space and the time and the love to do the deep work, because the deep work is painful. The deep work brings up stuff that you don't want to address, and some of the stuff that you didn't even know you needed to address. But if you give yourself the gift, and I do call it a gift, even though it can be painful, if you give yourself the gift of that time and the honor of knowing that you are priceless, and therefore it is a gift to dig into your pricelessness, I am telling you, you will begin to show up in a way that draws people, that draws opportunities, that draws all of the things you've been looking for, because you are showing up as exactly who you are and who you're supposed to be. Always. But you got to do the work.
You got to do the work. Oh, I'm looking at your beautiful face as you're saying this, and I'm sitting here going, everybody needs to listen to Laurel's episode on our show, Celebration of You. Like she said, it's on iHeart, it's all over.
Yes.
And I have to say that, and I want everybody to hear your story, Laurel, because, again, you are such a strong, beautiful, brilliant woman. And I loved at the beginning of the show, just knowing how passionate you are, even more so on a global scale, about voting and just your passion. I already see you doing something, and I wrote some things down because I'm like, I can't wait to talk to you offline. And yet, but see, you're standing in your own, you're owning your space, and you're not apologizing for it.
Yeah.
And something that you said, and I'll never forget that interview and you sharing about that experience in college, and it's something I'm really passionate about, and I really want everybody to hear this, is, do you allow the trials and tribulations of your life to define you or refine you?
Did y'all hear that? Define you or refine you?
You'll hear it on the app, because everybody's going to get a gift. Remember, we're going to talk about that. They're going to get a gift in the app, but it's really true, because you have a choice. And it's like that too. Are you allowing all this stuff to define who you are, or are you going to let it refine the magnificent diamond that you are, that's being refined through all of life stuff? I can look back on some of the darkest times and realize those were, as you said, those were some of the most beautiful gifts that I was given. And at the time, I'm not telling you that I saw it as a gift. I saw it as quicksand. And I saw it as, I don't think I'm ever going to wake up again, and I may not even live tomorrow. And so I say that with love now, but I go back and go, well, something much greater than me knew I had a greater purpose here.
Yes.
And I believe we all have a greater purpose here.
Yes.
And I think that when you really do give yourself the gift, as Laurel said, and give yourself permission to say, I don't have to be perfect, and who am I? And look back and celebrate the stuff you've been through, rather than throwing it under the carpet. And Laurel, I have to tell you this, I don't know how much time we have. I'm not even looking at a clock.
Right.
But I'm something you may not know about
Yeah.
me that I want everybody to know, because I've shared it on a few interviews.
Yeah.
That's really, you just hit it, and I want you to know, nobody to miss this. The work can be really deep work. Sometimes you have to find out things you didn't even know you needed to work on.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't know about Holly. We all have our fears.
Yes.
And I can't wait to hear your fabulous producer and you start laughing as I share this, that I used to be petrified of getting on an escalator. And as much as I travel in airports, if I can't hold on to both sides of the escalator, I go, and with all my luggage and stuff, I go find an elevator. I can't get on or off an escalator.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I can speak to thousands of people. I've spoken to up to 10,000 people in the ballroom and on stage. And yet, no fear. That's just what I do.
Right.
But getting me on and off an escalator. So I chose to do some trauma therapy.
Yeah.
Really working on the vagus brain, the nerve in the vagus
Yes.
brain. And I worked with somebody, and during COVID, it was all via Zoom, only did 3 sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and unearthed that I was in my mother's womb when she was on an escalator 9 months pregnant, and went into a sheer panic because she saw a little boy getting stuck in the escalator.
Oh, wow.
Trauma, unbeknownst, nobody's fault. It wasn't her fault. It was nobody's fault.
No.
But little do we know that some of our greatest fears and things we're dealing with that we don't even know could come as early as being in the womb. So I know that sounds crazy, but I had to share that because you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
So the work you've done, and indeed, but I feel like it's part of this finding Holly. I can get on escalators, by the way. Just in an airport. He's excited now.
Yes.
My poor husband, if he's with me, he's like, oh, here she goes.
Right.
I want you to videotape this.
Right.
What is this?
Well, but that's so important. There's actually some more studies that are going on now about trauma and generational trauma, right? Especially at the area when you talk about African-American people and slavery forward, and how that trauma generationally actually has DNA impact and begins to affect generations going forward. I mean, it's new study and new research, but it is starting to happen because trauma is real, y'all. Trauma is real. And give yourself the gift of finding somebody. Find somebody to talk to. And y'all have heard me. I'm a believer in therapy. I've been in therapy forever. Thank God for my therapist. Give yourself the gift of doing the work, whether that's a person, whether that's a book, whether that's just quiet time. You owe yourself the gift of doing the work. You do. Holly, this has been like fantastic. And I want to talk about the gift before we get a chance to go. So if you want to let people know what it is.
Absolutely. And it's a surprise. So I'm glad, right? And thank you, Laurel. Yes. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, all of you, for this amazing opportunity to just do what we're all here to do. And by the way, before I tell you your surprise gift, one more dangle the carrot. I no longer worry about what my business goals and objectives are. I'm in the flow. And as I say, I pray and get out of my own way. I'm in the flow. And what you said about 5 minutes ago, Laurel, abundance and the things that I'm supposed to be doing are flowing, and they're coming to me. And I'm not forcing myself up the river anymore. So again, you just mentioned it, and I didn't want anybody else to miss that piece.
I love that.
Stop worrying so much and get in the flow and let it go. And I know it sounds crazy. You're going to go, you're nuts. And I'm like, actually, I'm a living, walking example of it now. And I can honestly tell you, it's not nuts. It's glorious to be in the flow. So, and the gift for all of you to help you get in the flow. Oh, I didn't even know that. It will be a year on 11/11 of 20. So on November 11th, we launched, and it's another whole great story of divine, how God works and divine timing for everything, putting together based on so many people out there that said, can I get some more inspiration? And it was like, well, let's get the app done. And so a gift that was given to me by the amazing team that helped make it happen. So it's called Hollyisms. You can go to hollyism.com, pick your store of choice, whether you want it on your Android or you want it on your iPhone, wherever you want it. You get the app, and when you go in to download and subscribe to the app, use the code CELEBRATE, and that will give you the first 21 days of Daily Dose of Inspiration complimentary for only those that have listened to your show, Laurel. And there's videos, there's audio, and it's text. And oh, by the way, I have an interactive feature on so please do it. It's called Ask Holly. I want to hear from you. If you want to know more about something that was really hit your heart, or it was a challenge I provoked that day, let me know, because I'm interacting with you all the time. So that's your gift. Thank you.
Guys, I'm telling you, go get it. Go get it, and go pick up our book too. Can they get your book on the website too, Holly?
You can get it on the website too, and I personally will sign it if you want it signed. So
go get the book, go download the app, right? So download the app, and use the word celebrate, and you get the first 21 days complimentary, and interact with Holly. I mean, when she says she's on it, she really means it. So do that. Holly, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being flexible. We are going to do it again. So we're in fact, when we talk later today, because we're going to do a download later today, we will get another date on the calendar, because I want you to do this again. And so we will do it again. Thank you for sharing your gifts with me, with my audience globally. Thank you for the time. It has been, I got stuff today.
I always get joy from being around you, and I love working with both of you. Thank you for everything. And everybody stay in touch. Reach out to us at hollydowling.com. We love to hear from you. We're here to support, and blessings.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching the Rutledge Perspective. We'll see you next time.